Good morning. I am News Center Maine's Don Kerrigan with this week's Political Brew, here with our intrepid analysts. In the studio for the first time in quite a while, Democrat Ken Altshuler, Republican Phil Harriman. Thank you both for being here this week. All kinds of things going on.
Good to see you, Ken.
Good seeing you too.
Absolutely.
In person.
That's right. Not just through the magic of Zoom. A momentous event of sorts in this legislative session. The Democrat majority has decided to split the budget in half, pass the first half of it right away, not needing any Republican votes, and then continue negotiations on the rest of it, pass it before the end of June, again not needing any Republican votes. Phil, I'll ask you first. This has happened before, and it's always controversial. Are you surprised?
I'm not. It happened when I had the honor of being in the Senate. Angus King was the independent governor who felt like he didn't have control over the process, so he collaborated with Democrats to do what we're talking about today. So it's happened before. Unfortunately, it doesn't line up with Governor Mills's rhetoric during the campaign of being bipartisan and working with everybody in the legislative process, particularly, Don, and this is my key point, at a time when the rainy day fund is at its maximum. Revenues to state government have never been higher. Isn't it time for some tax relief for Maine citizens? And I think that's the sticking point, is Democrats don't want tax relief, Republicans do.
Or don't want to have the budget held up and sacrifice certain things that the Republicans may want to sacrifice, right? Ken, what's your take?
So Janet Mills is not in the legislature, so don't blame her for what the legislature does. She may be the head of the party, but she doesn't control the party. Nobody controls the party.
Okay, you know, the phone rings, they go down to her office, and she puts her in
wishful thinking. I'm not really offended by a basic budget and getting that set and avoid any prospect of a government shutdown. Not that it's likely to happen. And then deal with these superfluous stuff afterwards. And I agree, tax relief, tax reform is going to be a huge issue. Probably won't go anywhere. Everybody has a different view of what should happen with that. I'm actually one who believes taxes should be reduced. Remember when the state was sending out checks, I said, why don't we reduce taxes instead? So I'm on board with that. It's not going to happen, though. I have no real problem with it. It's not going to be a government shutdown, but I don't think it's a real problem.
Does it? We often have heard in the past on this that it poisons the well on other issues and reduces the chance of bipartisan work on other issues. Do you think that's likely?
No. I mean, if there's bipartisan cooperation, great. This is not going to change it. I don't think that's a realistic expectation no matter what happens. I don't think it changes anything.
And Phil, does it give a useful talking point to the Republicans in the legislature?
Well, it does amongst themselves. 2 years from now, the voters aren't going to care. But I would contrast what Ken is saying with there are going to be issues after this majority budget passes that they're going to need a 2/3 vote on something, whether it's some piece of legislation that's really important, or a judge that's going to be confirmed, or a PUC. Somebody's going to need a 2/3 vote, and the Republicans are going to be able to say, you didn't want to work with us then, we're not going to work with you now. So I do think there's going to be some toxicity in the air.
Yeah, and the last time they did this, which was a couple of years ago, the second part of the budget did end up being a unanimous vote, right. By, at least on the committee, and most Republicans supported it too. Right. So that's still at least possible.
Yep.
Right.
Possible.
Without tax relief.
Lots of things floating around the State House right now. Among them, a proposal to amend the Maine Constitution to guarantee the right to a clean environment. Ken, I'll let you start with this. Is this something that we need? Is it just a feel-good measure?
It's a feel-good measure. Now, what's wrong with feeling good, by the way? So I'm not really adverse to it. And you know, I see the younger people in the new generations coming up are putting a lot more emphasis on environmental issues than we did. And we kind of started it with Earth Day in 1970. But you know, they're seeing this as much more critical and vital than we are. So I think it is an important statement to make. It does invite lawsuits, but lawyers will find a way to sue no matter what, speaking as a lawyer. So I think it's feel-good legislation. It's not really necessary, but it does send a message to the youth of Maine, and I think a good message.
Yeah. Phil?
Well, I couldn't agree more with Ken on Sunday morning, but I do think going to the extreme of amending the Constitution to define or to grant a right that we're going to have a clean environment. Someone define for me what that means. When we were growing up, the rivers were too thick to shovel and too thin to plow, and the smokestacks were everywhere. There was trash in the McDonald's parking lot. We've come a long ways. We've got more to go, but we're all heading in the right direction, and I don't see this.
And of
as
course, to get
necessary.
this through, it's going to need a 2/3 vote, as you were just
Right.
as you were just mentioning. So,
Right.
be interesting to see what happens there. Also, issues this time being pushed by some Republicans relating to gender. One of them about what pronouns they can choose to use in the classroom. Another about dealing with transgender students. Phil, is this all a sign of kind of how much the National Republican Party and presumably the state is focused on these gender issues?
Actually, Don, I think it's an American discussion. There's this whole awareness that has come over the country, particularly for parents' generation and older, who are coming to understand that people identify themselves in different ways. I think the distinction in the conversation needs to be around who gets to decide what those labels are. Is it the student, him or herself? Is it their teacher? Is it their parent? That's the conversation that I think we need to have, and I don't see it as a Democrat or Republican issue.
Ken, do you agree with that?
Well, the first bill, the pronoun bill, is interesting because Republicans did very successful in the Virginia governor's race by saying you're losing control, parents, of your school and your children. And telling a child not to tell a parent something is just wrong. A child saying, I don't want my parent to know this, is a different issue, and whose rights are superior. Right. The transgender bill, which is really interesting, is because this is a solution without a problem. Under 2% of the United States population is transgender.
Right. And this is a bill about that would prohibit transgender girls who had been boys from participating in girls' sports.
Which is very rare. It all comes from the Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania swimming case, which has kind of let this whole wave, sorry for the pun, come and talk about transgender rights. It seems to me it's just a solution without a problem. We're making a lot about to do it, and that is more political, and that's getting into the woke discussion and debate, which is real political.
It also invites the opportunity to say, why don't we have transgender sports?
There's not enough of them to compete among themselves.
Well, maybe that'll change, but to put a transgender athlete who's a male who now wants to identify as a woman competing against women, I think most women would say that's not fair.
There's a way to deal with it. Time, a hormone treatment, relaxing of the male muscles. There's ways to deal with it, but it is a political issue.
Or a handicap, as they happen in
Correct.
some sports. All the people in my business have been breathlessly reporting and talking and speculating this week about whether former President Trump is going to get indicted by the DA in Manhattan in relation to the whole Stormy Daniels debacle. Phil, first of all, do you care? And secondly, do you think this is going to happen?
I do care, because the implication of a former president being criminally charged by a opposing party in a campaign year has got all the makings of chaos. And from what I understand, I think there's been new evidence that has come forward that would make it very difficult for the New York District Attorney to indict him. In Georgia, I think that's a whole other conversation.
Entirely different kind of case. And it almost sounds in this case like President Trump is hoping to be indicted and hoping for that spectacle.
Yeah, well, nothing like a showman
Didn't he
looking.
get arrested last Tuesday, wasn't he?
So Ken, you're the lawyer here. What do you think about
So I'm glad you brought up the Georgia thing, because there are three criminal things. There's the documents in Florida, there's the Georgia alleged interference, and there's the Stormy Daniels. This is the least offensive of the three, maybe personally because it deals with a porn star and sex, but the Georgia case is the one that is really, really instrumental and should have been the primary focus. I think the timing is bad. I think the New York action being first has a lot of problems. There's some evidentiary issues. There's can he be prosecuted? Can he be convicted? If I had my druthers, I would focus on Georgia first, Florida second, and New York third.
But here's a question. You make it sound like this. Is this a whole Democratic playbook?
That's the point. The DA is independent. The DA is saying, wait, there's a crime. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. I'm going to prosecute him like anybody else. Well, he's not anyone else. And I think some consideration, some prosecutorial consideration would have maybe slowed that down and seen what happened in other places first, and then be the third one in line, which kind of gives you a lot more flexibility.
So this is the same DA who campaigned on the mantra of "I'm going to get Trump."
Yeah. So now you have a campaign promise you have to fulfill.
Justice is blind, right?
And that's how he got elected. By the way.
Right.
He's not a judge, he's a prosecutor.
President Biden has issued his first veto. This of a bill that I struggle to understand, frankly, Phil. But this is a bill passed by Congress, led by Republicans, to overrule a Labor Department ruling that has to do with investments and whether the investment managers, I hope I'm explaining this correctly, can consider impacts of climate change on values of investments.
Do we know an investment manager who we can ask about
I'll
this?
try to boil this down for you. It's called ESG, and this is the new buzzword in the profession, where it's about investment managers making decisions on where you can invest your money in a retirement plan on environmental, governance, and social responsibility. And what the Republicans did is they passed a law that said, we're going to take that out of the regulators' discussion. This was a regulation. Now we need legislation to reverse the regulation.
And that was Donald Trump's legislation,
Right.
by the way.
Well, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
They put it on the president's desk, Biden, and he said,
Which means they got some Democratic support as well.
exactly, exactly.
Pass it.
And so he rejected it. So now the regulation will stay intact.
Yeah, since we presume the votes were close, so they are not going to be able to override that veto. Is this important that he vetoed it?
I think it's symbolic more than anything. I think most money managers are realizing that their responsibility is to help retirement plan participants get a good return on their money, and environmental, social conscious, and governance issues should be a secondary conversation, not the primary.
Yeah, Phil's right. Look, if you're not making money for your client's not going to hire you. So you're not going to make decisions that lose you money, right? The fact that Biden vetoed it was symbolic to the Democratic Party. It's part of the liberal view of these are important issues to consider. And it really didn't change, in my opinion, the management of people's money. The interesting thing is Jared Golden was the only Democrat to vote not only for the bill itself, but to override Joe Biden's veto. The only Democrat. I guess Jared's got a conservative streak in him after all. Yeah. Is that because of the second district, maybe? Re-election, maybe?
So.
Maybe
It
so.
might have something to do with it. Yeah. And thank you for giving me a great transition into our next topic. Jared Golden, he's already the subject of a Republican ad that is indirectly call Jared Golden, tell him this. They can't directly attack him yet. This is over the issue of Medicaid. And does this surprise Medicare? Excuse me, Ken. I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that they're already going after Golden?
No, I'm not surprised. Listen, this is the health insurance industry who is going after him and Joe Biden, because what's happening is Joe Biden's proposal would take money out of their banks, frankly. And so, the appearances that these attacking the elderly and the people on Medicaid or Medicare, not true. It is hurting the health insurance industry. So if people really look at what's being fought about, it's really not hurting the elderly, but that makes good advertisement. It has nothing to do with Jared Golden, nothing to do with Joe Biden. It has to do with the health insurance industry and just a political ad. That's what it is.
Phil.
See, I don't disagree with what Ken is saying. What it does tell me, though, is that the political brain surgeons behind the scenes that you never see statistically is saying, that second congressional district really should be ours. So what can we do to get out there and soften Jared Golden up?
They tried hard this last election cycle, and it didn't work.
Right.
As long as he's voting against Joe Biden's vetoes, that's not going to work.
That's insurance.
There you go. All right. Winners and losers for this week. Phil.
Thank you, Don. My loser of the week is the CEO of TikTok, who went before Congress and essentially, let's call it what it is. He basically lied. The winner this week is all the family farms that are opening up this weekend to celebrate the maple sugar harvest.
Nice. Right. My winner loser is the same person, Donald J. Trump. He's a loser because he has 3 potential criminal charges on the horizon. He's the winner because his points with the Republican Party has gone up. the same amount that DeSantis has gone down. So how do you do this? And he raised $1 million because he was going to get arrested last Tuesday. This is a brilliant publicist, a popularist, and he knows how to play the people. Winner and loser, same person.
That may be the first senator there. Thank you both very much. Thanks for being with us. Political Brew returns next week. News Center Maine continues right after this.